Welcome back to the Nose Plays. So, in one of my earlier videos in the Magic the Gathering arena, I mentioned that I had a little history with Hearthstone, and it was a little bit too long of a story to tell at the time. So, I'm going to go ahead and tell it now. I did have one of my viewers request the story, so here it goes. They were a Hearthstone player, I was a Hearthstone player, and here's my story. So, my journey with Hearthstone, and by the way, we're going to open some packs of Core 2019 in between parts of the story here. So my journey with Hearthstone started back when Goblins and Gnomes released. I decided to go ahead and dive into the game and give it a try. I'd heard some good things about it. I had a couple of friends who had played it, and I was curious. I really missed playing Magic. I had played Magic, quite a bit. The physical card game, but I had always kind of wanted a digital card game experience that was really good. And there were a few at the time that I played with, but none of them were very good. So enter Hearthstone. Jump into Hearthstone back during Goblins and Gnomes. And this was back during the time when guys like Trump and some of the other really popular and really good Hearthstone players were taking basically free-to-play decks all the way to the top of the ladder. And I was intrigued by that. So, I started playing a little bit, started collecting some cards, had a lot of fun. This was before the game actually had a Android and iPhone app. So, believe it or not, it was PC exclusive, just like Magic Arena is going to be in the short term. And it was great. I was collecting cards, I was having fun, I was able to build some decks that were, not really competitive, but at least I was having fun playing. Fast forward a couple of years, and basically more and more cards keep coming out. And the classic original set of cards that I had mainly been collecting, power creep started to kind of push a lot of those cards out of the mainstream decks, and they were replaced by much more efficient cards, much more powerful cards. And it got to the point where I believe Tournament of Kings came around, and I just really, my free-to-play decks just couldn't compete very much anymore. There were just too many really good cards that replaced basically every classic card in the set. And with a few exceptions, nobody's playing any copies of classic cards really, because there's just better cards out there for every single slot. So I kind of drop out of playing a little bit, and maybe for about a year, a couple of months. I'm not exactly sure how long I stopped playing, but I just sort of fell out of favor. Even though I think at this point there was the app and I was playing on my phone quite a bit. But then something happened, and something that made me very excited about Hearthstone again. The Cthulhu set came out, and with the Cthulhu set, there came a big announcement that Hearthstone was making about the future of Hearthstone. And the big announcement was basically that Cthulhu heralded in the Year of the Kraken, and it was the announcement that they were going to basically run a standard format of cycling sets of cards. And the big thing that made me super excited about this was that they made the announcement, it was an official announcement from Blizzard, that the core set of cards would forever be part of standard. They would always keep the core set of cards in standard, and they would rotate out all of the rest of the blocks of cards. And I thought to myself at the time, I can make a reasonable deck out of the core cards and whatever random packs I pick up from whatever set is relevant, that I could get into this again. I could play this again. This would be fun. Not only that, but they had a big promotion going on where there were like lots of free potential Cthulhu packs that you could unlock if you played during their special release event. So I did. I ended up scoring, I don't know, like 9 or 10 packs of Cthulhu cards, Call of Cthulhu or whatever that set was called. And I got enough cards. I got a copy of Cthulhu because that was the one that everybody got if they played during the thing. And I built some pretty cool decks. I really liked Cthulhu Druid. I had some really good Druid cards, and I spent like basically the next year during the Cthulhu expansion grinding and grinding and grinding and just playing lots and lots of games. I'd get up every morning with my cup of tea, and I would play 3 or 4 games of Hearthstone before I go to work. And then I'd play at work intermittently, when I wasn't busy doing other things. And I would play at night before I'd go to bed, and I would just grind dust and dust and dust and collect and collect and collect. And I would spend all of my dust on classic packs because I wanted to unlock almost every card in the classic set so that I had basically around 25 to 30% of the cards that were always going to be in standard. Because you can build a pretty reasonable deck if you have 25 to 30% of the cards in standard. And that was my line of thinking. So I spent a year basically grinding and grinding and grinding. And what I did with all of the cards that I collected, obviously I kept them because that's what you do in Hearthstone. But any of the cards that I had duplicates of, I collected a lot of dust, and I used that dust to craft 3 or 4 legends. I crafted a Sylvanas. I crafted... I can't even remember what all I crafted. But I crafted 3 or 4 of the legendary cards. And particularly ones that could be used in any class. So not ones that were tied to a class specific, but cards that could be used in any class, so that I could build some reasonable decks around some fairly powerful cards. And lo and behold, a year later, Hearthstone makes the announcement that, they made a mistake. They are not going to honor the commitment that they made at the beginning of their standard. They are going to have to remove just a handful of cards from the classic set and rotate them out and put them in the wild format, which I had absolutely zero interest in playing because wild format was exactly what got me to stop playing in the first place. There's too much power creep. You need too many cards to be competitive, to have any fun really at all. I just didn't want to do it. And so, lo and behold, the handful of legendary cards that they were banning happened to be every single one of the ones that I had spent a year farming. And, I'm not the kind of player... Let me be clear. I'm a free-to-play kind of guy. So when I was playing, I wasn't spending any money. So, Blizzard could feel pretty meh about whether or not I continued to play. But the one thing that I was concerned about is there were a lot of players like me that basically filled the bottom of the ladder for their competitive format. And if all of us just basically up and left, then now the bottom of the ladder becomes much more competitive in terms of what kinds of cards you need to have to even climb a few ranks. I don't know whether that ended up becoming true or not. But for me personally, because they went back on what they said they were going to do, and because it just hurt so much for me to spend that time and energy grinding for those cards that eventually just got removed from standard when it was clearly stated that the classic cards would never leave standard play. And I know that you can make a mistake, you can change your mind, that's fine. But for me personally, that was a blow that I could not forgive. It was one that just completely crippled any chance of me continuing to play the game. And, the thing is, like, I could sit there and I could grind for a bunch of new cards. I could have spent another year grinding for the next set of classic rares or any other set of rares, only to have them rotate out of standard play. And it just wasn't worth it to me. And I have not been back. I don't know whether they've reversed their policy. I don't know anything about what's going on in Hearthstone. I literally deleted every YouTuber that I watched that played Hearthstone on my feed. I was really salty about this, guys. I just walked away. And I haven't been back since. And don't know that I'll ever be back again. But I'm very happy to find Magic Arena, and I think that it could be maybe a stand-in. I don't know. Magic has some very similar problems with the way that they rotate their cards in and out, and we'll just have to kind of see how it goes. Um, I have a feeling that I'm going to enjoy Magic a lot more just because of the nostalgia and because it's the game that I'm more familiar with, one that I've played since I was a kid. And so I'll probably spend a little bit more time playing this one than any other one, especially if they do happen to port it to an Android, which is what I use, or iPhone, for those of you who use iPhones. But if they do end up porting it to mobile devices, I'm sure I'll spend a little bit more time playing it than I would otherwise. But that is my Hearthstone story. I was very upset that they went back on basically what they said they were going to do, and I just haven't been back since. And I have missed it at times, I will admit. I've looked for alternatives. I haven't found anything that felt as good as Hearthstone, kind of until this. And so this is a great opportunity for me to kind of get back into playing a collectible card game in a digital format. So, that being said, I have, through the course of playing videos for you guys, unlocked some packs of cards as rewards. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize for the issue with the mute button during my draft. That was a real big video for me. I really wanted to do that for you guys, and I'm really sorry that the second half of that draft got totally muted out. So you could watch me play, but you couldn't hear any of my commentary, and maybe that's for the best. My commentary is not as exciting as a lot of other people's commentary, but it's probably more exciting than dead air. So, I do apologize for that, but we are going to go ahead and open the packs that we won from all of that. So here we go. First pack. Looks like we got a wild card. Anything really exciting? Ravenous Harpy has some cool synergy with the black set in Core 2019. This is a pretty good land ramp card. If you think about this card as a land ramp spell instead of a creature, then it feels a lot better, because a lot of land ramp spells cost 2 or 3 mana and would pull a land directly from your library, put it tapped onto the battlefield, but they would not leave behind a token, and you'd still play that card. This card actually leaves behind a 1/1 token. You can kind of think of it that way. Anyways, it's actually a card, but I think this is actually a pretty solid card, and maybe one of the better land ramp cards in green. Not just in Core 19, but in all green. So that's a pretty cool card that they put together. Power creep at its best right there. What do we get for our rare? Oh boy, an Alpine Moon. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this in an earlier video, but during our ill-fated two-headed giant me and my daughter played, we actually pulled 3 copies of Alpine Moon out of our rares. And that was super frustrating to get a card that basically has 0 value in a limited format. This is definitely a card that they reprinted or created. I don't know if this is a reprint or a new card, but they specifically created for modern play. Maybe standard play in some standard blocks, but definitely not in limited. There's almost no interaction with this card and any card in the set. And that's a little disappointing. I wish that they would not do that. I wish if they're going to add a card like this, that they would at least include enough interaction within the set itself to be useful during a limited style tournament, such as draft or sealed. But that was not the case, unfortunately. So, go ahead and open our second pack. And okay, so a couple of cool cards here. I want to talk just a second about Thud. Thud has a really neat synergy or interaction with the spell Double Cast. If you're not aware, the way Double Cast works is it copies a spell that's already on the stack. But one of the stipulations of Double Cast is that anything that's an additional cost is considered already paid for the copy. So in this case, you could potentially Thud a large creature at an opponent and then double cast it for an additional 2 red, and you will not have to sacrifice an additional creature. The original creature will pay the cost for the copy as well as the original. So that's a pretty neat little synergy there. When I first read about that rule, I had visions of throwing a Gigantosaurus at my opponent and then double casting it to do 20 damage in a single turn. So that is a thing, potentially. Maybe not the most efficient way, but definitely a cool synergy if you're not familiar with how Thud works. The rest of the cards are pretty mediocre. Nothing too exciting. Dragon's Horde. Dragon's Horde in Draft is basically a Manalith that has some upside if you play any dragons at all. In a constructed deck, this could be a pretty cool way to draw cards if you're playing a lot of dragons, but I'm not sure that there aren't better ways. Although if you're playing a lot of dragons, you might be playing mono red, and so if you're playing mono red, there may not be a lot of better ways to draw cards. So this might be a good card in a constructed dragon deck. I'm not sure about that, but... And the last pack for you guys today. More wild cards. Root Snare, Dwindle. Dwindle, I would point out Dwindle as a pretty good card in Limited, in Draft, and in Sealed. It is actually pretty solid removal within the set itself. -6 basically makes all creatures, non-existent threats with a few exceptions. There are a handful of creatures that can grow bigger than this over time, or that actually have a power bigger than 6, but not many. It does have a little bit more usefulness, as it can be used as a blocker one time, but then it will be destroyed. So a creature with Dwindle, unlike a creature with something like Luminous Bonds or Pacifism, can still block, but it will immediately be destroyed. However, your creature will still be blocked for that particular turn. And our rare, Sun Cleanser, another one of those rares that's mainly good in a larger format like Standard or Modern. Not so great in the limited format of Draft or Sealed. But if you are playing somebody who's using lots of tokens, this is one way to kind of mess with them. And actually, in Sealed, a 2-mana 1/4 is a pretty solid body, especially if you're playing a late game strategy or a go wide strategy. This can soak a lot of early game aggro and just continually tank it. So it's actually not a bad card. It's just not one you're going to draft early. It's definitely not a first pick, if you're playing in a Sealed or a Draft format. But it could be useful if you're into white and you see this card come around. You might take it as a good early game blocker. So that is our 3 packs of cards, and that is my story about Hearthstone. I hope that was at least somewhat enjoyable, and it gives you a little bit of idea about where I'm coming from. So if you're interested in anything else, let me know in the comment section below. I will continue to play this a little bit. And one thing that I will do, if you watched my video on the blue deck, I believe at the end of that video we unlock a new deck. Or maybe it's in the middle, I can't recall, but we unlocked a new deck during the blue video, blue pre-constructed video. So it's a blue-black deck. It's kind of a control-y deck, and I will be demonstrating that and seeing if we maybe unlock some more free pre-constructed decks. So any free pre-constructed decks that I unlock during the beta here, I will go ahead and demo for you guys if I get a chance. So this has been the Nose Plays, and until then, have a great day.